We're joined on the phone line by legal expert Mr. Paul Ngobeni. A very good morning to you, Mr. Ngobeni. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us in our program this morning. The Constitutional Court has delivered the judgment stating that both Ngasana's exit and Abraham's appointment were both constitutionally invalid. What do you make of this judgment? Was it actually expected?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't expect this a judgment of this nature. And my reasons for that were that it's just baffling that the court is saying Ngasana was a victim of abuse of power, that President Zuma was hell-bent on getting him out of office by any means necessary, and he used both carrot and stick to put pressure on him to get out of office. Now, having found that to have been the case, one would have expected the court to say Ngasana should then return to his job. In other words, cure the effect of that constitutional invalidity, constitutionally invalid act. You would have expected him to be returned to his job. Then the court conjured up this notion that there are exceptional circumstances that prevented him from returning to office. But it also said that Ngasana was not entirely without blame for what happened during the process of his removal. Then even more bizarre is the fact that they say Abrams is a beneficiary of abuse of power. They are not saying that he colluded with the former president or that he bargained with the former president to be appointed at Ngasana's expense. They are simply saying, based on this so-called Odicral principle, that the constitutional invalidity of Mr. Ngasana's earlier exit also affects the validity of Abraham's appointment. In other words, if Ngasana's exit was invalid, it follows that his successor's appointment will also be invalid. Which again, I think a lot of legal scholars will disagree on that for many years to come. If Mr. Abrams was an innocent successor of Mr. Ngasana, it doesn't follow that Ngasana's setting aside Ngasana's settlement agreement would necessarily affect Mr. Abrams, because he's an innocent, albeit a beneficiary of that so-called abuse of power, but he's innocent in that regard. I didn't expect this judgment, but obviously the overwhelming legal view in the court was that even the minority judgment agrees with the majority, and they only differ on the issue of what the appropriate remedy should have been. They are saying that Ngasana should have been returned to office. There's nothing exceptional that prevents him from returning to office.
And now, Mr. Ngobeni, are you saying that in entirety, that perhaps this entire ruling, as you just cited, the several, pressures that Mr. Ngasana was actually subjected to, that he was actually, recipient of abuse in this entire case? Do you think that perhaps this was actually not really in his favor, looking at the effects that this has had on his career and so forth?
Well, if I understood your question correctly, the problem with the way in which Mr. Ngasana was treated, I remember actually I wrote an article about the Ngasana controversy when it first started, actually warning the president and the executive, the Minister of Justice at the time, that the pressure that they were putting Mr. Ngasana under was unlawful. Because remember what they were first accusing him of. They said, you have been denied security clearance based on the fact that you were acquitted of a criminal charge of murder while you were still a teenager.
So, Mr. Ngobeni, are you saying that...
After he went through all of that, they now wanted to bring disciplinary inquiry into the picture after the man has been appointed to the position. Then, when that didn't quite work, then came the huge settlement offer, the monetary offer that Mr. Ngasana accepted. And the court is saying that there was a carrot and a stick. No, there was a stick and a carrot and a stick and a carrot again, which resulted in Mr. Ngasana accepting these supposedly unlawful settlement package.
Well, Mr. Ngobeni, now let's take a look at the issue of instability within the National Prosecuting Authority institutions, which has been largely highlighted, of course, by the judge, stating that independence in this institution has been greatly compromised. What do you make of that? Is there actually hope that whoever then is then roped into the NPA will have the powers with regards to reconverting back the NPA into, an institution of its proper stance?
Well, that goes without saying. We must expect the next NDPP appointed to be a person of integrity and a person who would actually rise above all these factional battles that the courts have taken judicial notice of. A person who would bring all the role players in the institution at least to an agreement, or at least to some, even if it's an agreement to tolerate one another, but there should be someone who will bring stability to the institution. It's true there have been instability. It's true there have been factional battles within the NPA that the courts have commented on, the General Council of the Bar, and many other legal analysts have commented on that. So you expect that the person who's appointed next will be that person. Would be a person who's a unifier. Unfortunately, accusations of political partisanship go with the territory. It follows that when President Ramaphosa appoints the next NDPP, similar accusations will be made about whether or not he has appointed someone who will do his bidding in dealing with his political enemies, in dealing with his political rivals, and so forth and so forth.
I think that you might agree with me when I say that this entire decision, of course, by the Constitutional Court will have long-lasting implications for the NPA's leadership. Perhaps you agree that this will then further on set precedents, on the importance of those people making appointments to actually do so within the ambits of the law, of course, following the guidelines of the Constitution.
I agree with you. And one of the, maybe the unintended benefits of this type of judgment is that it forces the NDPP or the deputy NDPP, when they are subject to a pressure by the executive, to resist it, not to cave into the pressure, not to cave into the temptation of a quick settlement and monetary reward for walking away. In other words, they are saying, if you are in the position, if you were Mr. Nyasana, and you believed you are fit for office, and you believed you are guilty of no misconduct, you are supposed to resist this unlawful pressure brought upon you by the executive or by any government official. And that is what the constitutional independence spelled out in Section 179 of the Constitution means. So it's an absolute requirement, and it will assist whether it's the deputy NDPP or the NDPP, it will strengthen them. This national ruling says, do not readily cave into political pressure and do not readily cave into the monetary enticements that might be thrown your way. You should stand your ground and show fortitude. I think I'm quoting when the judge was talking about that you're supposed to have fortitude and resilience. Those are the words he used.
And now lastly, Mr. Ngobeni, before I let you go, looking at part of the judgment, of course, where judge has mentioned that now the president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, has now 90 days with regards to appointing a new NDPP. How do you think this is actually going to pan out? Do you think that perhaps this is going to be an easy pick for the president in this regard?
Well, I think, you see, the Constitution gives the president the power to appoint the NDPP, to appoint the Commissioner of Police, to appoint the head of the National Security Agency. So that is the power that is given exclusively to the president. It should be easy. I'm sure he has had some time to think about this issue. Remember that the High Court had ordered that he should make the appointment within 60 days from its ruling in early December or thereabouts. So he can't say that this issue has not been, in his mind, that he hasn't thought about it, that he hasn't done the preliminary sifting of, qualified candidates, that he hasn't done some checking of some people. I'm sure it's going to be an easy task for him in that sense, that he has had almost 8 months to think about this issue. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. The only problem is going to be the issue of partisan political battles that are going on both within the ANC and within our society in general. Whoever he appoints, we are going to look at it through the lenses, or is it someone who's pro or anti somebody? Is it someone who's going to do Ramaphosa's bidding in dealing with his political enemies? Those questions will always be there, but I think the president obviously has a larger duty, constitutional duty, than all of us, and that means he just has to follow his conscience and do the best, follow the constitution.
Well, Mr. Ngobeni, thank you so much for your time and for providing with us with that reaction. Legal expert Mr. Paul Ngobeni unpacking more details with regards to the Constitutional Court ruling made on Sean Abrahams, who has lost the appeal, where the ConCourt has stated that both Nqasana's vacation of the office was unlawful, as well as Abrahams' appointment was also unlawful.